Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her shuttle's command chair, the engine's hum vibrating through the worn leather. Stars streaked past the viewport like silver threads unraveling in the void, but her gaze locked on the flickering holographic display. The message from the Galactic Concord's Chamber of Elders was blunt: humanity's petition for full membership tabled, again. She clenched her jaw, the scar along her cheek pulling taut. 20 years forging alliances across the Orion Arm, and still they treated humans like exotic pets. Beside her, Jax Harlan slouched in the co-pilot's seat, fingers drumming a restless beat on the console. The wiry engineer brimmed with quick energy and grins, the sort who could rebuild a fusion core from scrap but forget his own birthday. 8th rejection? Or not? I'm losing track. His drawl carried easy nonchalance, but Ilara caught the frustration simmering underneath. Doesn't matter, she shot back, tone sharp as she punched in coordinates for the nearest relay station. We deliver the response to the embassy on Vega Prime, then shift to Plan B. Plan B: smuggling tech prototypes to sympathetic worlds, dodging Concord laws that chained humanity to observer status. Risky but essential. The Elders, those ancient tentacled vexery bureaucrats, clung to their traditions of equilibrium, whatever that entailed. Their balance meant stagnation for all. The shuttle shuddered, dropping from warp as Vega Prime's azure glow flooded the viewport. Jack straightened, eyes narrowing at the sensor sweep. Incoming hail. Official. Concord Enforcer vessel. Ilara's hand hovered over the comms. Enforcers didn't hail, they boarded. The display showed a sleek vexery interceptor, its iridescent hull gleaming under starlight, closing in fast. Open channel. Let's hear this fresh nonsense. The screen sharpened into Liaison Ktharis' face, his multifaceted eyes glinting like polished obsidian. Tendrils undulated slowly, signaling calculated calm. Captain Voss. Your trajectory enters restricted space. Divert now or face impoundment. Restricted how? Ilara leaned in, voice level. We're on diplomatic vector, Kthar. Direct from the chamber's summons. A pause, tendrils twitching. The petition invokes the right of reckoning. Your presence is required. Docking protocols incoming. Jack shot her a sidelong glance, grin fading. The right? That dusty trial from Concord lore, where species proved worthiness in some forgotten ordeal. Humans had evaded it for decades, lacking leverage for a vote. Now the Elders seemed done stalling. Ilara nodded curtly. Copy. Docking now. As the line cut, she turned to Jax. Scrub the manifests. If this right's as brutal as history claims, they can't find our side gigs. The shuttle aligned with the Enforcer's bay, clamps locking with a metallic groan. Ilara rose, smoothing her patched gray uniform, scarred from too many skirmishes. Jack stood too, slinging his toolkit like a weapon. You think they finally clocked we're done with their equilibrium nonsense? Or they're scared, she said, striding to the airlock. Humans build. We adapt. They hoard dust. The door hissed open to the Enforcer's sterile corridor, lit by pulsing bioluminescent strips like living veins. Kthar waited, flanked by 2 armored drones, sensors whirring. Welcome aboard, Captain. Transport to the chamber leaves in 1 cycle. His voice rasped wetly, but his eyes flickered. Pity? Amusement? Vexery were inscrutable. Ilara met his stare. Lead on. And Kthar? This right isn't the one with void beasts feeding on challengers, right? A tendril curled in what passed for a smile. Tradition selects its trials, Captain. Humanity petitioned. Now endure. As they followed him deeper, the stars outside pressed close, underscoring their distance from home. Jax muttered, Great. Cosmic hazing it is. Ilara stayed silent, mind-churning contingencies. Whatever the chamber hurled, she'd ensure humanity emerged transformed. Ilara's boots echoed on the assembly hall's polished obsidian floors, each step asserting her solitude amid iridescent scales and feathered crests. Translators hummed low, but unease rippled through the delegates like a skipped stone on water. Her ally, the cautious Sarathian advisor Creve, trailed close, limbs folding inward against the elder race's towering forms. She adjusted her neural cuff, its glow syncing with the hall's lights. The vote had ended, tradition victorious, innovation deferred. The chamber bound the Alliance to ancient protocols barring veil tampering, that quantum barrier encircling their sector. But Ilera knew the truth. Outpost scans revealed the veil fraying, energy tendrils lashing like solar flares endangering systems. They think rituals will seal it, she murmured to Creve, voice low with human edge that made his frills quiver. Creve's eyes flicked to the dais, where the stone-skinned Garath High Arbiter thumped his staff for closure. Precedents are unbreakable, Delegate Voss. Challenge invites ruin. His words echoed his scarred history, yet a spark of curiosity lingered, the quiet calculation that had forged their shadowed alliance. Ilera valued it, not blind faith but pragmatic choice. As delegates dispersed in rustling robes and clicking mandibles, she spotted Lyra, the reckless human engineer who'd snuck aboard against orders. Lyra lounged by a pillar, toolkit low, feigning work on a hologram while scanning for spies. Her boldness captured humanity's drive, from cradle world to stars, always tinkering, pushing boundaries. Plan B. Lyra whispered as Ilera neared, fingers drumming tensely on her belt. Ilera nodded, glancing at Creve, who hesitated then joined, frills flattening in doubt. Zorathian shortages from the last Veil surge had honed his pragmatism. We can't beg permission, Ilera said firmly, guiding them to restricted lifts. Outpost logs show the breach widening. Fringe colonies turned to dust without action. The doors hissed open. They entered, the tight space amplifying the station's core hum. Descending to engineering bays, Lyra summoned a hidden schematic on her cuff, shadows sharpening her resolute face. Workaround for lockdown, reroute via auxiliary vents. But alarms if we're sloppy. Creve tensed, voice chiming softly in warning. Failure brands us heretics. Ilera held his gaze, her resolve unyielding, the grit that secured her role. Better heretics than ghosts. Humanity crossed voids by defying consensus. The lift halted at sublevel 7, doors revealing dim corridors lined with humming conduits. An erratic spark danced on a panel, foreshadowing the chaos they faced. Lyra led, multi-tool whirring as she bypassed the first node. Ilera guarded their rear, hand near her hidden stun emitter. Creve scanned Ethernet for patrols. Tension thickened the air like dense oxygen, but their rhythms synced, human drive blending Zorathian wariness. Deeper, corridors narrowed, walls pulsing with ancient bioluminescence. Lyra's scheme targeted the Veil interface node, relic chamber for elder rituals. A human probe there, uploading adaptive code, could shore the fraying Veil. But a groan echoed, a Veil-induced stress, dust sifting from above, Ilera's pulse surging. Faster, she urged, clipped and urgent. Creve paused at a junction, sensors catching a signal. Intruders detected, 2 cycles away. Lyra swore softly, fingers blurring on the panel. The node waited, door sealed in glowing glyphs like embers. She jacked in, code scrolling, but safeguards flared, resisting. Sparks backfired, singeing her sleeve. Alarms wailed, crimson lights flooding the hall. Ilera whirled, emitter drawn as shadows stirred ahead. Adapt or flee, she said calmly amid turmoil. Creve nodded, frills rising in determination. They barricaded while Lyra manually rerouted, sweat tracing her brow. The first foe appeared, a security drone, sensors whirring. Ilera's pulse struck, crashing it into the wall with a screech. Elena gripped the console edge, knuckles whitening as holograms flickered with data streams. The chamber's hum had deepened to a growl, thrumming the deck like the ship's own warning. Beside her, Crix the avian Zorith diplomat tilted his feathered head, beak clicking in distress. This defies norms, he trilled, translation jagged via comm, reading spike past forecasts. She kept focus, fingers weaving across the interface, shunting power from extras. The external trial struck fiercer than expected. A rogue asteroid field riddled with gravitic anomalies, yanking the hull like unseen claws. The Galactic Chamber dismissed it as a stellar war remnant. Now a deadly gauntlet shredding their diplomatic ship before negotiations. Aliens gripped Ian's old protocols against adaptation, but Elena's team had no such chains. Humanity's table seat hinged on navigating the unknown, not parroting maps. Diverting auxiliary thrusters, she announced, voice even despite brow sweat. The ship bucked, groaning metallically as it dodged the first boulder. Ice shard stones whipped by, one skimming shields in blue flash. Crix flapped wings nervously, Dr. Harlan across the compartment adjusted glasses, double-checking tablet calcs, his caution evident. "We can't sustain this," Harlan cautioned, tone balanced yet pressing. "Anomalies warp the field, one errant pulse, we're wreckage." The thinker weighed risks meticulously, but he'd backed Elena's bold Earth plan. Fuse human improv with alien rigidity. Now, chamber traditionalists demanded old ways, honor, fraying their edge. Elena glanced, bravery igniting her eyes. "Adapt or perish. Crix, link your people to NAV core? Zorath resonance could steady us." He nodded, talons clicking as his implant connected. Iridescent lines bloomed on hologram, layering alien harmonics over human code. Messy, experimental, a necessity hybrid. The ship jolted harder. Alarms screamed as a massive asteroid loomed, craters glowing with inner anomaly. Elena's thoughts raced. Tradition's sublight skirt left them prey. Her microjump needle thread faltered in sims, guzzling fuel. Crix's aid might salvage it. "On mark," she commanded, slicing the noise. Harlan paused, then affirmed, fingers on jumps. Crix's trills sharpened. "Weave holds, but strains it seems." Hologram twisted like storm-tossed threads. Deck tilted, compensators whining. She hit execute. Stars blurred hyperspace for an instant, ejecting them beyond the rocks. Silence broke by stabilizing pings. They'd cleared, barely. The viewport receded the glittering graveyard. But Harlan's tablet warned, fuel at 20%, hull breached in Sector 7. The toll scarred, a gamble's mark. Crix preened in relief. Elena leaned back, exhaling. Too close. But proof, tradition kills, innovation endures. Harlan frowned at comms. Chamber signal awaits. They'll hate our deviation. Elena's jaw tightened. True stakes dawned, swaying a past-bound galaxy that human paths merited risk. As the ship limped to rendezvous, she pondered if ingenuity could bend the unyielding. Captain Alara Voss gripped the console edge, knuckles blanching as alarms blared rhythmically across the dim bridge. Nebula tendrils raked the hull, ionized sparks flashing viewports like vengeful fireflies. Beside her, Dr. Kale, the Concordance avian, fluttered feathers agitatedly, beak clicking. Madness Voss. Chamber edict clear, retreat rimward, safeguard fleet. Tradition yields core systems to anomaly. Alara glanced, jaw firm. Tradition brought us here, Kale, not beyond. She keyed a sequence, boosting forward shields from non-essentials. Engines growled deeper, vibrating boots. Her crew, Jax with his wiry smirk, Mira the stoic navigator scanning ahead, hunched at stations, fingers blurring. The anomaly lived. A space-time rift from botched ancient experiment, swallowing trade lanes. Chamber fossils voted quarantine, isolating billions over innovation risk. But Ilara's team volunteered salvage, slipping blockade via jury-rigged cloak. Now rift pulsing heartbeat like their probes snared, sensors overloading. Jack's status, Ilara demanded, steady despite sweating brow. He swiped grease from forehead, eyes fixed. Proba faglichas, capítulo. But patterns emerge, not chaos. Rift folds quantum strings, weaving a net. Pull back, we lose mapping data. Myra's fingers stilled, voice slicing sharp. Debris incoming. Collision in 30 if no course shift. Kale's wings half spread, shadows jittering. Shift? Defiance? Concordance strips your rank. Spare it? Ilara cut, leaning in. Humans bridge, don't seal. Mira, evasive delta, thread it. Ship lurched on Myra's execution, dampener straining. Shattered asteroid chunks streaked, one scraping hull and teeth-grating screech. Viewport framed the rift, violet-black maw tugging like undertow. Jax hooped, smirk broadening. Got it? Tether via auxiliary vents. Stabilizing, feed clears. Ilara breathed out, but gut tension spiked. Screen data unveiled not ruin, but order. Chaos pathways, stabilizable wormholes. Chamber tradition abandoned this. Human grit charted it. Kale gaped at display, beak slack. This alters all. But peril? Ours? Ilara ended, rift fixed. Extract. Bring the bird home. Tether hummed, drawing probe inch by inch. Alert flashed. Rift stirred, tendrils probing curiously, not voraciously. Ship quaked. Ilara braced, one slip unraveling everything. The shuttle's engines hummed dimly through Ilara's boots as she clutched the yoke, knuckles pale on synth leather. Beyond the viewport, asteroid fields, jagged forms twisted in starlight, a lethal maze claiming countless ships. Jax hunched at sensors, fingers tracing faint energy flickers like fading coals. Lock on relay beacon, he murmured, voice firm but wary after 3 jumps. Weak, sabotaged likely. Push engines harder, core burns before rendezvous. Ilara nodded, eyes on tumbling rocks. Worse runs in Prospector days dodging belt patrols, but this chilled differently. Concord edict marooned them, resupplies severed while Chamber debated humanity's barbaric expansions. Tradition they termed it, ancient packs strangling advance. Out here, survival ignored ballots. Console pinged sharply. Jax's head jerked. Debris field incoming. Heavy, Krell mining rig remnants from last explosion. Ilara banked fiercely, shuttle protesting, dampeners taut. Fighter-sized alloy chunks hurtled, one hull grazing an edge-setting screech. Shields priority, she ordered, clipped, bravery quelling gut fear. No breaches. Jax routed without quip, lips tightening as another surge loomed. Field dense Ned, shrapnel storm from species grudges over divine resources, not shared voids. Mission, to deliver terraforming proposal. Teetered on this thread, holds data core their leverage against chamber drag. Shuttle threaded turmoil, a massive pitted spinner dead ahead. Ilara calculated vectors and heartbeat. Jax, vent auxiliaries, spin boost. He glanced, hesitant. Nav scrambles a minute. Certain? Jaw set, mining grit rising. Trust. Danced uglier. Vents burst plasma, barrel rolling controlled. Fragment blurred by icy frost smearing viewport. Alarms flared then hushed, clearing peak. But cost bit. Sensors scrambled, power dip coughing engines. In aftermath quiet, Jax exhaled, reclining. Too near. Krell learn we're in claim zone. Won't? Ilara affirmed, course straightening firmly. Beacon brightened ahead, ally promise. Delay bit. Chamber deadline pressed, one hitch dooming bid. Tradition cursed, they'd forge stellar paths dodge by dodge. Deeper shadows concealed more than stone. Fin comme craquelle statique, urgent alien burst. Jax patched, face hardened as words fragmented. Intruders, human ship, intercept. Ilara's pulse raced. Not debris rivals. Krell enforcers, old ways guardians, converging to enforce isolation. She throttled up, engines whining, stealing scant seconds. Hold, she said to self and Jax. Chase ignited. Human cunning must outpace tradition's grip. Elena gripped console as shuttle quaked through nebula fringes, violet gases coiling like fading pyre smoke. Alarms staccatoed, each underscoring Dieter's hollow gain, time thin and slipping. Marcus hunched at NAV, fingers surging precise on holic keys. Brow sweat gleamed but voice held. Incoming signatures. 3 ships rapid close. Nohal, Hastel. Kale, Fringeworld's avian diplomat, ruffled feathers, talons deck tapping. Cautious alliance wear, now forward-leaning, eyes-piercing rear sensors. Chamber enforcers. Traced relay signal. Boarding ends it, no bargaining, no accord hope. Shuttle bucked, Marcus banked starboard, engine straining. Elena sendet gut pull, dampenas faltering. Plan. Nebula skirt interference, rogue fleet link, deliver drive schematics outrunning blockade. But Nebula rebelled, storms jumbled shields, exposing like void lantern. Enforcers pounced, angular hulls slicing haze predator-like. Options. Elena queried, voice-piercing clamor. Bravery defined her, elder arguer on neutral station. But evasion needed more. Marcus stayed focused. Dumped to rear thrusters, slingshot gas pocket. Risky, coils fry possible, but lead chance. Caution laced his glance for nod. He'd crafted prototype, melding human spark with alien scrap, limits intimate. Kale beak clucked. Fail? Enforcers seize drive. Chamber tradition deems our tomorrow heresy. Elena decided swift. Do. Scorched beats surrendered. Marcus triggered. Shuttle dove into the denser clouds, hull creaking under the strain. The Enforcer's weapons fire streaked past, plasma bolts illuminating the cabin in harsh blue flashes. One grazed the wing, sending sparks cascading across the controls. In the chaos, Elena patched into the comms, broadcasting on an open channel. This is Delegate Reyes of United Human Worlds. Stand down, we carry no threat, only solutions for the coming rift. Her words hung there, earnest amid the pursuit, but the response was a barrage of warnings in the chamber's archaic tongue, translated coldly by the AI. Asterisk cease innovation. Return to the fold. Asterisk the slingshot worked barely. The shuttle whipped around the gas pocket, gravity shearing off chunks of nebula in their wake, and for a moment the Enforcers fell back, their formations disrupted. Marcus whooped, a rare crack in his reserve, but Elena saw the damage readout. Shields at 20%, drive integrity compromised. They'd escaped, but the cost lingered. The prototype's core was overheating, its quantum lattice destabilizing. If they pushed it now to reach the fleet, it might unravel entirely. Kale settled back, feathers smoothing slightly. That was too close. The rift draws nearer. Without the drive, the fringe worlds fall first. Elena stared at the starfield ahead, the faint shimmer of the rogue fleet on the horizon. Tomorrow wasn't promised, but they'd clawed this far on grit and guile. Then we adapt, she said, resolve hardening like forged steel. Humanity's always done it that way. The shuttle pressed on, engines humming a defiant tune against the endless dark. Ilara gripped the console, her knuckles whitening as the ship's alarms blared in staccato bursts. The void outside the viewport twisted into a kaleidoscope of debris, remnants of the asteroid field they'd miscalculated. Reroute auxiliary power to the shields, she barked, her voice cutting through the red-lit hum of the bridge. Beside her, Jax hunched over the NAV panel, sweat beading on his brow, his usual wry grin replaced by a grim focus. He'd been the one to push for this shortcut through the belt, faster route to the chamber's neutral station, he'd said, to deliver their plea before the vote locked in tradition forever. But the rocks had other plans. A chunk the size of a shuttle slammed into the hull, shuttering the deck beneath their feet. Sparks flew from a nearby panel, and Cree, the avian diplomat from the fringe worlds, flinched, her iridescent feathers ruffling in agitation. This is folly, she hissed, her beak clicking sharply. The ancient paths honor the stars' warnings. We should have waited for the clear lane. Cree had joined them reluctantly, her cautious nature a counterweight to human impulsiveness, but now her words carried an edge of "I told you so" that grated. Jax ignored her, fingers flying across the controls. Shields at 30%. If we don't punch through, we're scrap. Ilara, give me thrust on the mains, now. The engines groaned in response, propelling the vessel forward into the narrowing gap. Ilara nodded, slamming the lever down, her mind racing through the contingencies they'd drilled back on Terra. The chamber's decision loomed larger than this debris storm. The elder species, guardians of galactic stasis, had proposed sealing off expansion into the outer rims, citing eternal balance. Humanity's counter, unleashing fusion drives for colony ships, bridging worlds, had been dismissed as reckless. But if they arrived late or not at all, the vote would pass unchallenged. Another impact rocked them, this one shearing off a sensor array with a metallic screech. The ship listed, gravity flickering as systems strained. Cree braced against the wall, her taloned feet scraping the grate. Your ingenuity blinds you. The stars demand respect, not conquest. Her voice trembled, not with fear but with the weight of her people's lore, tales of fleets lost to hubris, etched in constellation myths. Ilara shot her a glance, eyes fierce. Respect without progress is stagnation. We're not conquering, we're surviving. She adjusted the stabilizers manually, the joystick slick under her palms. Jax hooped as they cleared a narrow passage, the field thinning ahead like a parting curtain. But triumph soured fast. A warning light pulsed, hull breach in the cargo bay where their prototype drive schematics were stored. If the vacuum claimed them. Seal it off, Jax said, already prioritizing. But Ilara hesitated, calculating. Sealing meant losing the data cores, their only proof of human adaptability. Without it, the chamber would see them as empty talkers. No, she decided, voice steady. Patch the breach. Kree, your suit's got the nano-sealant. Get down there. The avian's feathers bristled. Me? In that chaos. Yet she moved, driven by the alliance they'd forged in the station's antechambers, human grit meeting her measured wisdom. As she dashed for the lift, Jax plotted their escape vector, the ship bucking like a wild thing. Illyra watched the debris swirl, a single jagged spire glinting in the starlight, hurtling straight for them. Her hand hovered over the evasive thrusters. One choice and the future tilted. Captain Alex Rivera gripped the railing of the observation deck, her knuckles white against the cold alloy. The void outside the station's viewport stretched endless, stars mocking their predicament with indifferent pinpricks. The ancient relay core, heart of the interstellar network that bound the chamber's worlds, hummed erratically below decks, a tradition-bound relic now on the brink of catastrophic failure. If it went dark, comms would shatter across sectors, isolating colonies and stranding fleets. The chamber's elders had decreed no modifications, honoring the builder's code from millennia past. But humanity? They built for tomorrow. Alex, you seeing this? Jax's voice crackled over the intercom, laced with his usual sarcasm but undercut by strain. The engineer wiped sweat from his brow in the bowels of the core chamber, his toolkit splayed like a surgeon's tray. The flux readings are spiking again. That bypass we jury-rigged last cycle? It's holding but barely. One more surge and we're cooking from the inside. She nodded, though he couldn't see it. Lyra, the Trellian diplomat hovering nearby, her iridescent scales flickering with unease, tilted her elongated head. This defies the accord. The elders will not forgive such improvisation. Her voice, a melodic trill, carried the weight of her people's caution, forged in eons of deliberate, unhurried progress. Yet here she was, allied with these reckless humans, her caution cracking under the relay's growing whine. Tradition won't save us if we're all ghosts, Alex replied, turning from the stars. She paced the deck, boots echoing in the sterile hum. The stakes clawed at her, not just the station but the fragile peace. The rival Karjan faction, scenting weakness, had already dispatched probes, shadowy scouts probing the station's defenses. A blackout would be their invitation to strike, unraveling the alliances humanity had bled for. Down in the core, Jax pried open a panel, sparks dancing like fireflies. Lyra, if you can sweet-talk that auxiliary console from up there, we might reroute power without tripping the safeguards. He dodged a jet of venting plasma, his suit seals hissing in protest. The plan from the previous shift had backfired spectacularly. A simple diagnostic probe overloaded the secondary grid, forcing them into this desperate pivot. No more half measures. Lyra's tendrils flexed, accessing the interface with fluid grace. Her people navigated data streams like breathing. It was their gift, their anchor to the past. But as readouts flooded her vision, crimson warnings of cascading failures, she hesitated. The code, it sings of restraint. Altering it risks the harmony. Yet her fingers danced, overriding protocols one reluctant line at a time. Alex Vetchet, Tension coiling in hier gut. The station shuddered, a low groan vibrating through the hull as the core's pulse quickened. Harmony be damned, Jax muttered, splicing a conduit with improvised clamps fashioned from salvaged hull plating. Human grit, turning scrap into salvation. The surge hit then, a thunderclap that flung him against the bulkhead. Alarms blared, lights flickering to emergency red. Alex bolted for the access ladder, Lyra trailing with uncharacteristic haste. By the time they reached him, Jax was hauling himself up, face grim under the helmet glow. Stabilized for now. But the Karjan probes are closing. We bought minutes, not hours. He flashed a wry grin, blood trickling from a split lip. Your turn, Captain. What's the play? Alex scanned the diagnostics Lyra projected, the alien's caution yielding to necessity. The relay's failure wasn't just mechanical, it was a symptom of the chamber's stagnation, a tradition that choked progress. But humans adapted. We don't fix it, we evolve it. She jabbed at the console, initiating a feedback loop that would broadcast a decoy signal, mimicking the core's shutdown to lure the probes into a trap. Clever, risky, born of camaraderie in the face of the abyss. Lyra's scales dimmed, a sign of resolve hardening. This chooses tomorrow. The station trembled again, but the whine steadied, a fragile truce. Outside, the probes altered course, drawn to the phantom distress. Victory hovered, earned in sweat and sparks, but the cost lingered. The Elder's wrath, the Karjan's retaliation, a galaxy teetering on the edge of change. Alex exhaled, the stars seeming a fraction closer, humanity's light piercing the traditional dark. Elena gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles whitening as the ship's alarms blared a staccato rhythm that matched her pounding heart. The Chamber's decision still echoed in her mind, the ancient council's refusal to share the stasis tech, clinging to their traditions like a shroud. But they weren't giving up. Not her, not Jax with his unyielding optimism, nor Mira, whose sharp eyes missed nothing in the flickering data streams. Power reserves at 20%, Mira announced, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her forehead. She swiped through holographic displays, fingers dancing like a pianist in a storm. The auxiliary generators are failing faster than projected. If we don't reroute soon, we'll lose life support in the auxiliary bays. Jax leaned over the engineering panel, his broad shoulders tense under the jumpsuit stained with days of grime. I've got an idea. The Chamber's energy matrix. It's incompatible with our systems, but if we jury-rig a harmonic converter using the spare dilithium coils. He trailed off, already pulling tools from the cluttered toolkit. His brave streak shone through, turning desperation into determination, but Elena saw the flicker of doubt in his eyes. She nodded, pushing down her own caution. Do it. I'll handle the overrides from here. The ship groaned around them, a vast metal beast adrift in the nebulous swirling gases, the environmental hazard closing in like a vice. Ion storms battered the hull, each wave sapping what little power remained, a rival force as relentless as the Chamber's elders. As Jax worked, sparks flew from the exposed wiring, illuminating his focused grimace. This isn't elegant, Elena. It's a hack, pure human grit. He connected the coils with a satisfying click, then paused, glancing at her. What if it backfires? We could fry the whole grid. Mira shot him a wry smile, her wit cutting through the tension. Then we improvise again. That's what we do. She adjusted the flow regulators, her cautious nature evident in the precise calibrations, double-checking each input before committing. Elena initiated the sequence, her breath held. The alarm stuttered, then silenced. Power levels crept up, 30%, 40%. Relief washed over her, but it was short-lived. A new alert flashed, structural integrity compromised in the lower decks. The storm had torn a breach, and without the Chamber's tech, their makeshift repairs wouldn't hold. We need to seal it, Elena said, already moving toward the access hatch. Jax, suit up. Mira, monitor from here. Jax grabbed his helmet, his camaraderie pulling him forward without hesitation. On your back, Captain. Let's show that chamber what tomorrow looks like. They descended into the dim corridors, emergency lights casting long shadows that danced like specters. The air grew colder, laced with the acrid tang of ozone from the breach. Elena's suit seals hissed as she pressurized, her mind racing through contingencies. The cost was already mounting. Lost equipment, strained resources, but turning back wasn't an option. At the rupture, the void yawned, stars mocking their fragility through the jagged tear. Jax deployed the emergency foam, but it foamed sluggishly, the low power sapping its efficacy. It's not holding, he grunted, forcing more from the canister. Elena wedged a support beam into place, her muscles burning with the effort. One more push. Together they braced it, the ship shuddering as another gust hit. The foam finally set, a fragile seal against the abyss, but Elena knew it was temporary. A lingering consequence. They'd limp back to the chamber not as beggars but as equals demanding a rethink. Myra's voice crackled over the comms. Breach contained for now. But power stabilizing. We did it. As they climbed back, Elena felt the weight of their choice. Tradition had chosen stasis, humanity motion. And in that motion they forged ahead, one clever adaptation at a time. Alex gripped the console, his knuckles white against the flickering red lights. The ship's engines groaned like a beast in its death throes, vibrations rattling through the deck plates. Mia hunched over the auxiliary panel, her fingers flying across the jury-rigged circuits, sweat beading on her forehead despite the dropping temperature. "We're bleeding atmosphere in 3 sections," she muttered, voice tight but steady. "If we don't seal the hull breach soon, we'll be sucking vacuum before the council even votes." Zor floated nearby, his elongated limbs clutching a handhold, iridescent scales shifting from calm blue to agitated orange. The aliens' compound eyes darted between the humans and the comms feed, where the chamber's holographic representatives droned on in their ritualistic tongue. "They invoke the Ancients' edict again," Zor translated, his voice a low hum. "Tradition demands we abandon the unproven path. Your ingenuity is deemed chaotic, a threat to the harmony." Alex shot him a glance, forcing a grim smile. "Chaotic? Tell that to the asteroid field we just threaded thanks to Mia's tweaks." He punched in another override, but the system rebelled, error chimes piercing the air. The plan had been simple. Demonstrate human adaptability to sway the chamber, prove their ship could survive the nebulous storms without relying on the aliens' sacred stabilizers. But the latest surge had fried half their backups, and now the council's delay felt like a noose tightening. Mia yanked a cable free, sparks dancing like fireflies. "Got a patch on the forward seal. Buying us 10 minutes, maybe?" She straightened, wiping her hands on her jumpsuit, eyes locking with Alex's. "But if they don't greenlight the supply drop, we're done. No fuel, no shields. We drift into the void." The comms crackled, the lead counselor's face materializing in a swirl of ethereal light. "Human representatives, the chamber has deliberated. Tradition holds. Only those who honor the old ways may draw from the collective resources. Your vessel's modifications violate the balance." Alex's jaw clenched. He leaned into the pickup, words measured but edged with steel. "With respect, your traditions got us this far, but they're not enough for what's coming. That nebula storm? It's building again, bigger. We've adapted because we have to. Let us show you." Zor's scales flickered uncertainly, but he nodded fractionally, a silent vote of confidence. Mia crossed her arms, her wits surfacing in the tension. "Yeah, or we can all go down singing ancient hymns while the ship turns to scrap." The counselor paused, the hologram shimmering as if weighing unseen scales. Outside, through the viewport, the nebulous tendrils coiled closer, electric blues and furious purples promising oblivion. Alex held his breath, the weight of their isolation pressing in, the humans' grit against an unyielding cosmos, one choice away from tomorrow or nothing. The dim hum of the auxiliary generators filled the cramped engineering bay, a relentless drone that matched the pulse in Lena's temples. She wiped sweat from her brow, her fingers leaving a streak of grease across her skin. The air recyclers struggled against the acrid tang of overheated circuits, and every breath carried the faint metallic bite of failing seals. Around her, the team worked in synchronized fury, Jax prying at a jammed panel with a makeshift lever, his wiry frame taut with effort, and Mira hunched over the diagnostic console, her cautious eyes flicking between readouts and the flickering emergency lights. "We've got maybe 10 minutes before the core breach hits critical," Mira said, her voice steady but laced with the edge of someone who'd seen too many simulations turn real. She didn't look up, fingers dancing across the keys to reroute what power she could. Lena nodded, though doubt gnawed at her. Their initial plan, bypassed the tradition-locked protocols of the chamber's ancient safeguard, had backfired spectacularly. The AI core, programmed to preserve the old ways at all costs, had interpreted their hack as a full assault, triggering a cascade of defensive purges. Now the station's life support was bleeding out, and the docking clamps held their shuttle like a vice. Jax grunted as the panel finally gave way, sparks showering his gloves. "Got it? Relays are fried, but I can jumper this if we—" His words cut off as a low groan echoed through the hull, the station shifting under some distant strain. Alarms blared anew, red lights pulsing like wounded heartbeats. Lena's mind raced, piecing together fragments of human history she'd studied in the dim glow of colony archives. Not the grand epics but the gritty tales of engineers who jury-rigged survival from scrap. Grit they called it. The thing that let her ancestors cross voids when others faltered. Scrap the jumper, Lena decided, her voice cutting through the noise with the sharp clarity of command born from necessity, not rank. We use the momentum from the failing stabilizers. Mira, sync the core's purge cycle to the shuttle's thrusters. It'll fight us, but if we time it right, the recoil could shear the clamps. It was a gamble, raw and unpolished, leaning on physics over protocols. The chamber's tradition demanded stasis. Preserve the relic station as a monument to the old alliance, even if it meant dooming the frontier outposts to isolation. But humanity? They built bridges from broken beams. Mira hesitated, her cautious nature surfacing in the furrow of her brow. That could destabilize the whole frame. If it twists wrong. She trailed off, but her hands were already moving, pulling up the alignment schematics. Jax shot Lena a grin, his witty spark undimmed by the peril. "Boss, you're turning this rust bucket into a slingshot." "I like it." Beats dying polite. The station shuddered again, harder this time, a metallic screech reverberating as a bulkhead somewhere aft began to buckle. Lena felt the floor tilt beneath her boots, the artificial gravity glitching in waves. She braced against the console, her brave resolve a quiet fire amid the chaos. Images flashed unbidden. The outposts waiting, families huddled in rationed habitats, their futures hanging on this fragile chain of choices. No speeches, no heroics, just do the work. "Initializing sync," Mira announced, her tone shifting to focused resolve. The console lit up with conflicting warnings, the AI's voice chiming in with its archaic denial. Asterisk preservation protocol engaged. External interference prohibited. Asterisk Lena ignored it, slamming the override sequence Jax had hot-wired from scavenged parts. The generators whined higher, power surging through improvised lines that sparked and sizzled. As the purge cycle peaked, the station lurched violently. Lena's stomach flipped, the world blurring into a storm of alerts and jolts. The clamps groaned, then screamed, metal tearing against metal in a deafening release. Their shuttle, tethered but thrumming with borrowed thrust, yanked free in a burst of uncontrolled spin. Jax hooped, wrestling the manual controls as Mira stabilized the systems. But triumph soured fast. A secondary alarm pierced the din, hull integrity at 20%, and the relic station, now adrift, was venting atmosphere in glowing plumes. They cleared the debris field, the shuttle's engines straining against the pull of the dying giant. Lena stared at the view screen, the ancient structure tumbling slowly into the void, its traditions silenced not by conquest, but by the inexorable march of need. A piece of history lost, but tomorrow secured. Her hands trembled as she keyed the comms to the outposts. "This is Lena Reyes. We're coming home. Hold the line." The response crackled back, faint but fierce, camaraderie unbroken, ingenuity's quiet victory etched in the stars. Ilara's hands trembled as she sealed the final connection on the makeshift relay, the hum of the human jury-rigged fusion core vibrating through the chamber's stone floor. Sweat beaded on her forehead, mixing with the grime of 12 hours in the dim light of the ancient vault. Beside her, Jax wiped his brow with a rag that had once been part of an alien envoy's robe, his eyes flicking to the viewport where the nebulous tendrils clawed at the station's shields. "It's holding but not for long," he muttered, voice steady despite the strain. That core spitting sparks like a cornered alley cat. Across the room, Creve, the crystalline advisor from the Elder Concord, paced with facets glinting in agitation. His form shimmered, projecting holographic protests that flickered like dying stars. "This defies the edicts. The chamber decreed isolation. Tradition binds us to the old ways, not your reckless tampering." But his words lacked the fire they'd held hours ago, when the first plan had crumbled under the weight of failing power grids and encroaching void storms. Ilara's initial diplomatic push had backfired spectacularly, alienating half the council with human bluntness, forcing them into this hidden vault as the station buckled. She straightened, ignoring the ache in her back, and met Creve's gaze. "Edicts won't stop the nebula from swallowing us whole. We've lost 2 sectors already, good people, your people too." Her voice carried the grit of someone who'd stared down worse on frontier worlds, not the polished tone of council halls. Jax nodded, sliding a panel shut with a decisive click. The core's whine steadied, feeding energy to the auxiliary drives they'd scavenged from derelict pods. The alarms blared anew, red lights pulsing like a heartbeat on the fritz. Through the viewport, the storm's core loomed, a swirling maw of plasma and debris that had claimed the outer rings. Ilara remembered the cost. The engineer who'd stayed behind to reroute failing conduits, his last transmission a garbled promise of just one more minute. Lingering consequence, she thought, victory wouldn't erase that shadow. Creve halted, his projections stabilizing as he processed the relay's output. Data streams flowed across his form, mapping the human's adaptation. No grand techno-miracle, just clever rerouting of the station's ancient inertial dampeners, fused with portable human arc welders to punch a stable vector through the chaos. It aligns, he admitted, tones shifting from accusation to reluctant awe. The path forward, your path, bypasses the traditional anchors without shattering them. Jax grinned, the first real one since the crisis hit. That's the trick. We don't break, we bend. He slapped Ilara's shoulder, camaraderie cutting through the tension like a lifeline. As the station lurched into motion, engines groaning against the pull, Ilara watched the nebula recede. The chamber's traditionalists would rage, isolationist votes fracturing under the proof of survival. But tomorrow belonged to those who chose it, humans and allies alike forging ahead with grit and a shared spark. The vault's doors hissed open to a new dawn, scarred but unbroken.